Shalom, my friends. Alexander Blinn joins you. As we have already mentioned, this week God's people is studying the weekly Torah portion, Mishpatim. In the 23rd chapter of the book of Shemot, or Exodus, in verse 5, we find a remarkable passage. The verse itself is a bit difficult to translate and understand, although the commandment is very simple. Therefore, we will recap several different interpretations of this verse. So, if you see the donkey of one who hates you, and this donkey can barely cope with carrying its burden, it's lying helpless under its load, and somehow you refrain from unburdening it. Unburden along with them, that's the verse. I would say one of the most accurate translations is the following. If you see your enemy's donkey fallen under its burden, do not leave him alone to unburden it. Unburden it with him. As we can see in the original text, there is no word to help. And the whole conversation is about unburdening. The word unleash, leave, untie, abandon. It appears several times in our verse, while the most ancient translations of the Torah, the Aramaic translation, Alkilos, interpret it in the following way. Unburden what you have in your heart against that person, and then unburden his donkey with him. Onkelos interprets this verse as follows. You should not help a man when you hate him. If you help a person accompanied by your hatred, and in some way you try to help him despite your hatred, in the best case it will look like you will preach at him and say, "Look how you treat me and how I treat you. Look how I help you, because I'm not like you. I hate you too, but I love God, so for the sake of the Most High, I help you. Look how much better I am than you." Well, or it will be a help with such a face that surely it will be hard to accept. The interpretation of Onkelos says, get rid of your hate before you help unburden a donkey that belongs to a man you hate. Only then can you stand with him. Only then will you have compassion for him, for his trouble, for his donkey. Only then you will be able to unburden the donkey with him. When you see the donkey, unburden yourself prior to unburdening the donkey. Other commentators point out three words in this verse, rather difficult to translate. There is a kind of internal struggle in a person, whether to help or not. So on the one hand, it is clear that the man is in trouble. His donkey can barely cope with his burden, and he needs help. On the other hand, I can't tolerate that man. So you saw that person and you passed him by. You rode on your donkey. If we put it in the modern language, you met a man with a flat tire. You met him on the highway and you passed him by. Well, I should have helped, even though he's such a bad person. What can I do? I've already passed by. I can't now violate the traffic lane by turning through a double solid lane. It is dangerous from all drivers. It is dangerous for me. Okay, God will help him. Besides, I hate him. So even if God doesn't help him, well, so be it for him. So according to this interpretation, according to these commentators, this commandment is addressed to the man who saw the donkey of the man he hated, but he had just passed by. And the Torah says to that man, go back, abandon your hatred, go back and help him to unlearn his donkey. While looking at this man you hate, you couldn't make yourself stop to help him. It happens. When you looked at him, you could not help him. When you look to the Torah, you can help him. The Torah restores peace between people. When you look at the Torah, you realize that in the end, this person's spiritual root is probably the same as yours, and you can see what the Most High created him to be. And the Most High didn't create him so that you could hate him. The Most High created him to serve, and maybe if you help him, you can somehow bring him back to serve. That is the other path too. When you have already passed, when you have already skipped, the sages of the Talmud pose an even more obvious question. How could a person you hate have a donkey at all? How can you hate a person at all since you have the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself? The commandment to take care of your neighbor, and the whole weekly portion is full of caring for one's neighbor. So where does the hatred come from? There are two answers to this question. The first answer says, of course, you can't hate your neighbor, but what can you do? Not everybody can cope with avoiding hating him. Yes, we hate in spite of the fact that we shouldn't. In cities where it is illegal to run a red light, people drive on a red light, just like there are people who lie, even though they know they shouldn't. That is why people experience feelings like hatred, even if they know it is wrong. What can you do? This feeling already exists in your heart, this hatred, which prompts you not to help the other person. But even if you hate that person, stop helping him anyway. In other words, when you look at that person, you don't want to help him. But when you look at the Torah, perhaps the hatred disappears. There is another option. The other option is, let's say, ideological hatred. Sometimes it happens that a person driving down the road sees another person knowing that this person is a criminal, a villain, a murderer, maybe a rapist, a pedophile, a thief, but only he knows this. There is no other witness. He can't prove anything, but he knows this man is still committing crimes with impunity. And according to the sages, such a man can be hated. Of course, there is some hatred, some bad feeling toward the offender. And here again, the Torah says, despite this, it is not for you to punish him. It is not for you to deprive help of him. It is not for you to deprive this man of care. Also, the phrase, if you see, is very important here. Literally, it's easy to see the grief of a man we hate, but we don't care about it. And if some Hitler suffers from a toothache, I sincerely do not feel sorry for him or even care for him. And I stand by the fact that he deserved it, and I don't feel sorry for him. Well, Hitler is a radical example, but there is a neighbor who doesn't seem to be Hitler at all, but we can't see him. What we can see the donkey. We see that this man has a donkey, which in this story is the one who suffers. Not the man we hate, but his donkey. And because of our hatred, the donkey may not be released from its suffering. Instead, it may die. It may happen that it isn't the donkey that suffers, but the man's wife and children. Our hatred can be limitless. It can spread to that man's family, to his donkeys, to his cats. It could also happen that the dog or cat of a grumpy neighbor was killed. As much as we may find our hatred is out of control, as much as we may say that we feel some negative feelings toward a particular person, but we certainly don't feel anything toward his wife, his father, or his daughter. How precisely can we choose the object of our hatred? We can say, yes, we don't like this person, but it has nothing to do with the donkey. Maybe by helping the donkey, we will somehow reach this person. There is really no big harm in helping the villain or supporting the villain. There's trouble from learning from a villain. If you just help him, there's no harm in it. I should stress right away and say a very important thing, that the word sinah, which is translated as hate, and the usual translation is the word hate, does not mean such radical hatred as it may sound in English. The closest meaning here is to dislike such a person. As an example, we read, if a man has 2 wives, he will love the one and hate the other. To hate is, of course, to love less, to dislike. Well, since it is about the hate, we are talking about hatred. Actually, the Torah does not refer to such radical, violent feeling as appears in English. But what can we do? We cannot say that this feeling is foreign to us. There are times when it literally means hatred, and then such a care for a donkey is relevant and yet remains a commandment. Well, it is also important to recall that there is an interpretation of the word
Hamor,
donkey that is related to the word
Homer,
material world. And here a man can say, I would help him spiritually. Here is a sermon I would tell this man to confess, to know the true God, to give up all those things for which I do not like him. While I don't want to help him in the material world, he has spiritual problems, and let him fix his spiritual problems first. There is an interpretation of this commandment that, no, you still should take care of the material things, even if it's a person you don't like for spiritual reasons. Even if in the spiritual world, in the spiritual field, he has much to fix. But there is another interpretation which says, leave material things. Leave your attachment to material things, your carnal hatred, and overcome that hatred. Or rather abandon that hatred. Get rid, unburden that hatred, and go help your neighbor's donkey. And through that donkey, help your neighbor, who will no longer be the person you don't like, but a true neighbor. These are the different levels that are revealed in the interpretation of this commandment. The Holy Blessed One will bless all those who study His will, who seek His face. The Holy Blessed One will bless you and your families, your husbands and your wives, your sons and your daughters, your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. The Holy Blessed One will bless your parents, fathers and mothers, grandmothers and grandfathers, great-grandmothers and great-grandfathers. Take care of them, appreciate them, love them. The Holy Blessed One will give sustenance to those in need of sustenance, and send a decent job so that there will be time for spending time with family and for studying the scriptures, as well as for good works. There may be prosperity in your home, abundance and opportunity, and a desire to help others. The Holy Blessed One will bless and heal the sick ones and give wisdom to the doctors to heal. He will support and encourage those who support the sick. The Holy Blessed One will reconcile families lacking in peace, nations lacking in peace. He will give peace to the hearts of people, reconcile fathers and children, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters. He will reconcile neighboring peoples and stop war. The Holy Blessed One will bless you and your homes, as well as all of those who are with you, with all the abundance of His infinite blessings. Alexander Bland was here with you. Thank you for listening to me.